I'm Lucas, 32M, and I've been estranged from my father Richard, 58M, and stepmother Rebecca, 52F, for the past 14 years. As soon as I turned 18, I moved out of their house, worked multiple jobs to make ends meet, and barely scraped by. Even though it was tough, the choice to leave was infinitely better than staying with them. My biological mother passed away when I was 5, and my father remarried Rebecca when I was 7. From the beginning, it was clear that Rebecca resented my presence. She saw me as a constant reminder of my father's previous marriage and made no effort to hide her disdain. My father, instead of protecting me, chose to ignore the situation and often sided with Rebecca to keep the peace. Growing up, I faced constant emotional abuse and neglect. Rebecca would often compare me unfavorably to her own children from a previous marriage, my step-siblings Alex, 30M, and Mia, 28F. She'd say things like, "Why can't you be more like Alex?" Or Mia would never do something so stupid. My father remained silent during these tirades, effectively condoning her behavior. One particularly painful memory stands out. When I was 14, I had saved up money from my part-time job at a local grocery store to buy a new gaming console. I was so excited to finally have something of my own. But just a week after I bought it, Rebecca decided that Alex deserved it more because he had gotten good grades. She took it from my room and gave it to him. When I protested, my father told me to stop being selfish and think about the family. As I got older, the emotional abuse escalated. Rebecca would routinely go through my things, read my private journals, and share embarrassing details with my step-siblings. She'd mock my interests, belittle my achievements, and constantly remind me that I was a burden on the family. My father, meanwhile, became increasingly distant. He'd work long hours, and when he was home, he'd avoid any confrontation. On the rare occasions when I tried to talk to him about Rebecca's behavior, he'd brush it off, saying I was being too sensitive or that I needed to try harder to fit in with the family. The final straw came during my senior year of high school. I had been working hard to maintain good grades while also working part-time, hoping to get a scholarship for college. I had my sights set on a university about 3 hours away. When Rebecca found out, she went ballistic. She accused me of abandoning the family and being ungrateful for all they'd done for me. In a moment of anger, she tore up my college applications that I had left on the kitchen table. My father walked in on this scene and did nothing. He simply turned around and walked out of the room. That's when I knew I had to leave as soon as I turned 18. The day after my 18th birthday, I packed what little I owned and left. I didn't have much of a plan, just a determination to get away. I couch surfed with friends for a while, worked multiple minimum wage jobs, and slowly started to build a life for myself. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I went to bed hungry, times when I had to choose between paying rent or buying textbooks for the community college classes I was taking. But even in those tough moments, I never regretted my decision to leave. Over the years, I've managed to create a good life for myself. I put myself through community college, then transferred to a state university where I earned a degree in computer science. I now have a stable job as a software developer, my own apartment, and a group of close friends who have become my chosen family. I've been in therapy for the past few years, working through the trauma of my childhood. It's been a long journey, but I'm proud of how far I've come. I've learned to set boundaries, to value myself, and to recognize toxic behavior. Recently, my stepsister Mia reached out to me through social media. She said that our father is ill and that both he and Rebecca want to reconnect. She painted a picture of them as remorseful, claiming they've changed and want to make amends. Part of me is curious. Despite everything, there's still a small part of me that yearns for a relationship with my father. But a larger part of me is terrified of opening that door again. I've worked so hard to heal and build a life for myself, and I'm afraid of undoing all that progress. My girlfriend Zoe, 30F, who I've been dating for 2 years, thinks I should at least hear them out. She comes from a close-knit family and believes in the power of forgiveness. But she also says she'll support whatever decision I make. I'm torn. On one hand, I've dreamed of hearing an apology from my father and Rebecca for years. On the other hand, I'm scared of being hurt again. What if they haven't really changed? What if this is just another way for them to exert control over my life? I don't know what to do. Should I give them a chance to explain themselves? Or should I maintain the distance that has allowed me to heal and thrive? Am I the asshole if I choose not to reconnect with my dying father? Update 1. It's been a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. After much deliberation and several long conversations with Zoe, I decided to meet with my father and Rebecca. I want to thank everyone who shared their thoughts and experiences. Your insights were invaluable in helping me make this decision. I arranged to meet them at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near my apartment. I chose this spot so I could easily leave if things got uncomfortable. Zoe offered to come with me for support, but I felt this was something I needed to do alone. When I arrived at the cafe, I was surprised to see how much my father had aged. He looked frail and tired, a stark contrast to the strong, imposing figure of my childhood. Rebecca, on the other hand, looked much the same, though there was a nervousness in her demeanor that I'd never seen before. The meeting was intense. My father started by apologizing for his absence during my childhood. He admitted that he had failed me as a parent, choosing the path of least resistance rather than standing up for me. He expressed deep regret for not protecting me from Rebecca's mistreatment and for not being the father I deserved. Rebecca's apology was less straightforward. She acknowledged that she had treated me unfairly but tried to justify her actions by talking about how difficult it was to be a stepmother. She mentioned feeling threatened by my presence and the memory of my mother. While I appreciated her honesty, I couldn't help but feel that she was still trying to shift some of the blame onto me. As they talked, I realized something important. While they seemed genuinely remorseful, they didn't fully grasp the extent of the damage they'd caused. They spoke about specific incidents, the gaming console, the torn college applications, but seemed oblivious to the daily emotional toll their behavior had taken on me. When they finished speaking, I took a deep breath and shared my perspective. I told them about the years of therapy, the struggle to build self-esteem, and the constant battle against feelings of worthlessness that stemmed from their treatment. I explained how their actions had affected every aspect of my life, my relationships, my career choices, even my ability to trust others. My father listened silently, tears in his eyes. Rebecca seemed shocked, as if she was hearing this for the first time. Maybe she was. Maybe they had both convinced themselves that their behavior wasn't as bad as it actually was. After I finished speaking, there was a long silence. Then my father asked if there was any chance of rebuilding our relationship. He mentioned his illness, stage 3 lung cancer, and expressed a desire to make things right before it was too late. I was honest with them. I told them that while I appreciated their apologies, I wasn't ready to welcome them back into my life. The trust that had been broken over years couldn't be repaired in a single conversation. I explained that I needed time to process everything and that I couldn't promise anything. They seemed disappointed but understood. As we were about to leave, Rebecca handed me an envelope. She said it contained letters from both of them, explaining their perspective on what happened and their hopes for the future. She asked me to read them when I felt ready. I left the cafe feeling emotionally drained but also strangely relieved. For years, I had imagined this confrontation, and while it didn't go exactly as I had envisioned, it felt good to finally say my piece. When I got home, Zoe was waiting for me. I told her everything that had happened. She listened patiently, offering comfort and support. The envelope from Rebecca sits unopened on my dresser. I'm not sure when I'll be ready to read its contents. For now, I'm taking things one day at a time. I'm proud of myself for facing my past, but I also recognize that this is just the beginning of a long and complicated journey. I don't know what the future holds regarding my relationship with my father and Rebecca, but for the first time in years, I feel like I have control over the situation. I'll keep you updated as things develop. Thank you again for all your support and advice. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my meeting with my father and Rebecca, and I wanted to give you all an update on the situation. After our initial meeting, I took some time to process everything that had been said. The envelope with their letters remained unopened for several weeks as I grappled with my emotions. Eventually, with Zoe's encouragement, I decided to read them. My father's letter was heartfelt and remorseful. He delved deeper into his own struggles during my childhood, his grief over my mother's death, his fear of being a single parent, and his misguided belief that providing a complete family was more important than ensuring that family was loving and supportive. He acknowledged that his choices had caused me immense pain and expressed a genuine desire to make amends, if I was willing to give him the chance. Rebecca's letter was more complex. While she reiterated her apology, there was still an undercurrent of justification for her past behavior. She wrote about her own insecurities and how she had felt threatened by my presence in the family. However, she also expressed regret for how she had handled those feelings and acknowledged that her treatment of me was inexcusable. Reading these letters stirred up a lot of emotions. On one hand, I felt validated. Finally, they were acknowledging the pain they had caused. On the other hand, it brought back painful memories I had worked hard to move past. After much reflection and several discussions with my therapist, I decided to take a cautious step forward. I agreed to meet with my father alone, without Rebecca present. We met at the same cafe as before. This meeting was different from the last. Without Rebecca there, my father seemed more open and vulnerable. He shared more about his cancer diagnosis and his treatment plan. He talked about the regrets he had and how facing his mortality had made him realize the magnitude of his mistakes. For the first time, I felt like I was seeing the father I had always wished for, someone who was present, listening, and genuinely caring about my feelings. It was both healing and heartbreaking to experience this now, after so many years. I shared more about my life, my job, my relationship with Zoe, my hopes for the future. He listened attentively, asking questions and showing a genuine interest in who I had become. At the end of our meeting, we agreed to keep in touch. We've set up a schedule to meet once a month, just the two of us. I've made it clear that I'm not ready to have Rebecca in my life yet, and he's respected that boundary. As for Rebecca, I sent her a brief email thanking her for the letter and explaining that while I appreciate her apology, I need more time before considering any kind of relationship with her. She responded respectfully, saying she understands and will wait until I'm ready, if that day ever comes. This situation is still complicated, and I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm cautiously optimistic about rebuilding a relationship with my father, but I'm also protecting myself by maintaining clear boundaries. Zoe has been incredibly supportive throughout this process, and I'm grateful for her presence in my life. I know this journey of reconciliation, or at least understanding, with my father will be long and potentially difficult, especially given his health situation. But for now, I feel like I'm making the right choice for myself. Thank you all for your continued support and advice. I'll update again if there are any significant developments. Update 3, it's been 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share the latest developments in my situation with my father and Rebecca. Over the past few months, I've been meeting regularly with my father. Our monthly cafe meetings have become a fixture in both our lives. Through these conversations, we've slowly begun to rebuild our relationship. It's been a process of rediscovery, learning who we are as adults and trying to bridge the gap created by years of estrangement. My father's health has been a significant factor in our interactions. His cancer treatments have been grueling, and there have been times when he's been too weak to meet in person. On those occasions, we've had phone calls instead. Hearing the fatigue in his voice during these calls has been difficult, stirring up complex emotions of concern, sadness, and lingering resentment. Despite his illness, or perhaps because of it, my father has been making a concerted effort to be the parent he should have been years ago. He listens when I speak, offers support when I need it, and respects my boundaries. There have been moments of tension, particularly when conversations drift towards the past, but we're learning to navigate these difficult topics together. A significant moment came last month when my father asked if he could meet Zoe. After discussing it with her and my therapist, I agreed. We met at a restaurant, and I was touched by how my father went out of his way to make Zoe feel comfortable. He asked about her work, her interests, and our relationship. Zoe later told me she could see how hard he was trying to be supportive. As for Rebecca, things are more complicated. She has respected my wish for distance, but my increasing contact with my father has inevitably brought her back into the periphery of my life. My father doesn't hide the fact that he discusses our meetings with her, which I've come to accept. About a month ago, Rebecca reached out again. She sent an email expressing her continued remorse and her hope that one day we might be able to talk. She also shared that she started seeing a therapist to work through her own issues, particularly those related to her behavior during my childhood. I responded to her email, acknowledging her efforts and expressing appreciation for her respecting my boundaries. However, I also reiterated that I'm not ready for direct contact with her yet. The wounds from her treatment are still deep, and while I'm working on forgiveness, I'm not there yet. This journey of reconciliation has not been easy. There are days when I question whether I'm doing the right thing, whether I'm opening myself up to be hurt again. But there are also moments of genuine connection with my father that I never thought I'd experience. My relationship with Zoe has been a source of strength throughout this process. Her unwavering support and outside perspective have been invaluable. We've actually started discussing our future more seriously, including the possibility of marriage. It's both exciting and a little scary to be planning a future that now potentially includes a relationship with my father. As my father's health continues to decline, I find myself grappling with conflicting emotions. There's a sense of urgency to resolve our past issues, but also a fear of rushing a process that needs time. I'm trying to balance building this new relationship with protecting my own emotional well-being. For now, I'm taking things one day at a time. I'm cautiously optimistic about my relationship with my father, guarded about any future interactions with Rebecca, and deeply grateful for the support system I've built for myself. Thank you all for your continued support and advice throughout this journey. I'll update again if there are any significant changes. Update 4. It's been a year since my original post, and I wanted to provide a final update on my situation. Sadly, my father passed away 2 months ago. His health had been declining rapidly over the past few months, and despite aggressive treatment, the cancer ultimately proved too much. I was by his side when he passed, along with Rebecca and my step-siblings. The last few months of his life were intense and emotional. As his condition worsened, our meetings became more frequent. We had many deep conversations during this time, addressing years of hurt and misunderstanding. It wasn't always easy, but I'm grateful we had the opportunity to clear the air before it was too late. In his final weeks, my father expressed how proud he was of the man I'd become, despite his failings as a parent. He also made a final request. He asked me to try and make peace with Rebecca. Not for her sake, he said, but for my own. After my father's passing, I took some time to reflect on everything that had happened over the past year. The journey of reconciliation with my father had been challenging but ultimately healing. It allowed me to let go of some of the anger and resentment I'd carried for so long. With this in mind, and honoring my father's last wish, I decided to have a conversation with Rebecca. We met at the same cafe where I'd first reunited with my father a year ago. The conversation was difficult and emotional. Rebecca apologized again for her past behavior, this time without any justifications or excuses. She shared that she had been continuing her therapy and had come to fully realize the impact of her actions on me. She expressed deep remorse and a desire to make amends, if I was willing to give her the chance. I was honest with her about my feelings. I told her that while I appreciated her apology and the steps she had taken to change, the hurt she had caused ran deep. I explained that I wasn't sure if I could ever have a close relationship with her, but I was willing to try and move forward in a cordial manner. We agreed to take things slow. For now, we're keeping our interactions limited to occasional emails and maybe a coffee meetup every few months. It's a small step, but it feels like the right one for me at this time. Throughout all of this, Zoe has been my rock. Her support and love have been unwavering. In fact, amidst all the emotional turmoil of the past year, we decided to take a big step in our own relationship. We got engaged last month. Planning our wedding has been a welcome distraction and a reminder of the beautiful future we're building together. As I reflect on the past year, I'm amazed at how much has changed. I've lost my father, but in his final months, I gained a relationship with him that I never thought possible. I've taken the first steps towards a civil relationship with Rebecca. And I'm about to start a new chapter of my life with Zoe. The journey hasn't been easy. There have been moments of doubt, anger, and sadness. But there have also been moments of understanding, forgiveness, and hope. I've learned that healing isn't linear and that it's okay to have conflicting emotions. I'm not sure what the future holds regarding my relationship with Rebecca or my step-siblings. But I do know that I'm in a much better place emotionally than I was a year ago. I've made peace with my past in ways I never thought possible, and I'm looking forward to the future with optimism. To everyone who has followed my story and offered support and advice along the way, thank you. Your words have been a source of comfort and guidance throughout this challenging year. As this chapter of my life closes, I feel ready to embrace whatever comes next.